Hi, my name is Satria Rizaldi Alchatib. I am a lecturer in International Relations at the Department of International Relations in Universitas Slamet Riyadi of Indonesia. I am also a co-founder of RISET, Regional Security Society.
My name is Nur Luthfi Hidayatullah, and I'm a lecturer of International Relations Department in the State Islamic University of Sunan Ampel, Surabaya, and I'm concerned about several research issues, including non-traditional security, Indonesia's foreign policy, and also recently Islam and international relations.
You're listening to Indo-Pacific Voices, a podcast for regional perspectives on a wide range of topics with one mission: to explore the emergent issues facing the Indo-Pacific.
We are going to talk about ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific. So this topic has been around for past few years. We know that Indo-Pacific region is one of the most congested and also contested region in the world right now, or as it is at the center stage of two of the largest oceans in the world, the Pacific Oceans and also the Indian Oceans. A lot of many great power hedging is also creating. It means that this region has a lot of potentials, but also has a lot of risks. So the ASEAN Outlook on the Pacific came up with the idea of mitigating that risk and also to explore different potentials, including the maritime potentials and also maritime explorations. And also ASEAN also wants to engage external partners in meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals in maritime frontiers. Basically, AOIP is a very important framework that needs to be addressed by a larger policymakers and academic communities. And in ASEAN Outlook on the Pacific, it is more on the explorations of new potentials and also to have more of a legally binding arrangement in exploring resources and also to have a more solid patrols and also activities. We know that diplomacy in ASEAN is very mutually inclusive. It uses more on the dialogue instrument, consultative arrangement to address issues in the regions. So this is also in line with the idea of ASEAN principal objective is to reignite trust building within ASEAN and also outside ASEAN, because we know that ASEAN has a very limited capacity in terms of providing sanctions or deterrence to its member. We know that in order for us to be more progressive in the future, we need to engage more and more partners within the regions to be able to fully realize the ASEAN objectives to have a prosperous and secure region. We know that the recent one of the biggest event within the region is the accessions of Timor-Leste. We know that this issue has been a particular headache among all of us in ASEAN. But however, we know that Indonesia particularly has a bittersweet relations with Timor-Leste. We have a historic human rights issues with the Timor-Leste, and also not to mention the separation event that we endure in 1998 that involves the UN. It makes the relationship between Indonesia and Timor-Leste bittersweet. We know that as Timor-Leste was once part of us, now we have to readmit Timor-Leste after a series of human rights issues. The idea of to give access to Timor-Leste is to pay our historical debt. Questions also involves: are we ready for Timor-Leste to become part of ASEAN? We know that Timor-Leste brings to us not not only a promise of a more united ASEAN, but also there is also a perils of economic baggage, and Singapore has been so outspoken about this.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to explain the kind of challenges that we are currently facing in the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Outlook. First of all, we would like to give a definition about what kind of condition are we facing in international relations around the Indo-Pacific Indo-Pacific area, according to ASEAN's perspective. For example, from the statement of our previous Foreign Minister, Martina Legawa, the previous Foreign Minister of Indonesia, he once described the ASEAN Indo-ASEAN region as dynamic equilibrium, which is a region where there shouldn't be any great power competition and there shouldn't be any domination from superpowers or great powers, but there has to be schemes or mechanisms of multilateralism in dispute settlement as well as in problem solving around the Indo-Pacific region. And because of that, coming from that definition, the Indonesian government has been persistently engaging various countries, middle powers and great powers altogether, to resolve issues in the ASEAN Indo-Pacific region through multilateral dispute settlement mechanism. For example, previously in the Yudhoyono era, we have witnessed several organizations created under ASEAN. For example, the ASEAN +3, +5, as well as +8. We remember the East Asia Summit that was once used to gather various great powers as well as middle powers all together. It used to be a forum where China, USA, India, Russia, and ASEAN members come together under the leadership of ASEAN. However, this East Asia Summit didn't last long because there was a problem between various members, and there is lack of political continuity from the governments of each countries. And because of that, recently in the Jokowi administration, Indonesia tries to bring back its regional leadership in Southeast Asia, and through different kinds of policies which tries to challenge great powers' foreign policy in the Indo-Pacific. We have also witnessed various claims around the Indo-Pacific era, for example, the Belt and Road Initiative from China. And this Belt and Road Initiative from China also claims around the ocean region of South China Sea. We have seen China constructing man-made islands in the Paracels and Spratleys and claiming the whole South China Sea to themselves, which creates tension with ASEAN member states. And we have also seen the United States of America's free and open Indo-Pacific area during the Trump administration, trying to bring back the status quo of having no country monopolizing the area or the ocean region of South China Sea. And because of that, Indonesia, in the early stages of Joko Widodo's administration, had a policy called the Global Maritime Fulcrum, trying to put Indonesia as the center of between the Indo-Pacific region as a maritime power, which connects different countries through its maritime power. There are different kinds of issues which we need to address, especially in the Indo-Pacific area. First of all is to identify the countries which have great interest in the Indo-Pacific territory. As we say, the Indo-Pacific area has been described as the region of the 21st century, where most great powers and middle powers are concerned about, and they have also a big influence in that region. We first need to identify the powers there. We have China, of course, which tries to dominate through Belt and Road Initiative. We also have the US, which tries to keep the Indo-Pacific area open. And we also have middle powers, such as Indonesia, we have Australia, we have South Korea, and also India has recently been dominant in addressing issues in the Indo-Pacific area. After identifying the powers, we need to check the clash of influence maybe and the different national interests which overlaps between these powers. For example, Indonesia's ASEAN Outlook tries to make sure that the Indo-Pacific region is based on a specific rule which is in accordance to the ASEAN Charter. For example, resolving disputes through consultation and consensus, no intervention towards other countries' domestic issues. After identifying the actors of international relations and which kind of states have interests in the region, the next point is to identify what kind of issues are we trying to face, facing right now in the Indo-Pacific region. Most of these issues are non-traditional security issues. For example, we have human security issues, migration, illegal migration. We also have drugs trafficking. We have terrorism in several regions in Southeast Asia, refugee problem in the Indo-Pacific region. And facing these problems, it's important for countries to collaborate instead of focusing on power politics and hard power, high politics competition between the countries. Because we have common problems in the Indo-Pacific region, it's much better for different countries, great powers and middle powers altogether, to actually collaborate in resolving or at least responding these mutual issues, non-traditional issues in the Indo-Pacific region. And finally, related to identity politics, we need to also talk about identity in the case of conflicts which are occurring or which might create social distrust among societies in the Southeast Asia region, especially, and in general, the Asia-Pacific region. For example, the issue of Islam and international relations. There has been, if you look at it from the people-to-people diplomacy, there have been various efforts from different countries trying to unite different societies of different ethnicity and religious backgrounds into cooperating from different countries. And one of the way to do that, and one of the identity that we try to bring up, is the identity of Islam. In the Indo-Pacific region, there are countries with Muslim majorities such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, and there are also countries with Muslim minorities. And by engaging in people-to-people relations, it might resolve, hopefully, some of the issues that the Muslim minority societies have with their government. For example, those Muslim minorities in regions such as in South Philippines or South Thailand, how to engage with majority of non-Muslim society there. It requires different kinds of steps that we believe we could offer. Some of these steps which include, for example, obedience towards the government and also multiculturalism, cross-cultural understanding to bring about harmony between various societies and religious and identity societies within different countries. And through this mutual understanding, we hope that most of the conflicts in the region can be resolved, because by having dialogue, by having regional outlook and multicultural understanding, we hope that the issues that we are currently facing could be resolved through multilateral dialogue, not only in the governmental level, but also people-to-people diplomacy.
I pretty much agree with what you have said about the urgency to have a more cooperative measure than competitive measures within the region, as we know that Indonesia has been largely known as a trendsetter for a more friendly relations in the region. So this is exactly what I want to bring in this second occasions, because we need to see what is the Indonesia's leadership in ASEAN is going to unfold next year. We need to also see what is the prospect and challenges that it unfolds. So Indonesia's leadership is happening in, I guess, one of the most important timing in the world right now, because we just hosted G20. We just came back from, I guess, APEC. We also just concluded Bali Democracy Forum in Bali. So Indonesia's leadership globally has been in the spotlight right now. So it is also timely for Indonesia to continue to progress, to show its leaderships, to bring more cooperative measures in the region. So I had the opportunity to speak to one of the Indonesian representatives that Indonesia's leadership should be able to promote more civic engagement to solve so many non-traditional security issues in Indonesia, because civic engagement has been undershadowed for so long. So many agencies needs to be more engaged within ASEAN's umbrella and address the closest and the most issue, unfortunately, in ASEAN, that is to address the issue of maritime boundaries. And also the second is to address the issues of refugees, forced migrations. And also we need to also address some of the most pressing issues regarding the migrant workers, because this is also something that has been so transboundary, but is also underrated and overshadowed. We know that we are bound together by the the non-interference principle in ASEAN. So, which means that in terms of the domestic political crisis that has led to a coup d'etat in Myanmar, another issue that I want to address regarding this is the status of the stateless refugees. So this is something that we need to work together in ASEAN, also in the broader Indo-Pacific region. So in this case, I think ASEAN needs to engage more with the Indo-Pacific stakeholder, especially SAARC, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperations. I think this is also a timely response from SAARC to mechanize its regionalisms, to provide more legal assistance for the Rohingya refugees, to at least helping them to assimilate with the civil society, provide them with proper shelter, and also giving them a roadmap where they can claim at least permanent residency or citizenship in Muslim majority countries within ASEAN and also SAARC. So this is something that we need to address. And the last thing I think that we need to address is the issue of illegal migration. So this is between a mix. Rohingya is also within this mix in terms of illegal migrations. I think we need in terms of Indo-Pacific Outlook, we need to institutionalize our approach to illegal migration. As Mas Luthfi said, our core objective must be to promote a more comprehensive, cooperative measures by not violating our own rules, right? So we need to institutionalize this mechanism. We also need to formalize these mechanisms on paper to promote strategic trust building intra-ASEAN, so that we can be a true and genuine security community in the future.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mas Satria, for explaining that there needs to be a more institutionalized cooperation in problem solving in the Indo-Pacific region. And it's actually quite interesting for me trying to understand the idea of problem solving, because previously when we analyze the governance of the administration of Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, it's not more about problem solving, but it's more into upholding regional values to make sure it's implemented within the ASEAN region. And also, when we look at the Joko Widodo administration, most of our foreign policy it's to actually obtain our national interests, not so much in problem solving within the region. So if Indonesia will become much more active in problem solving as our foreign policy orientation independent and active, then I would guess this problem solving role of Indonesia will still be within the corridor of upholding our national interests and also regional values. And that's okay, because we are a middle power, so we have national interests to uphold. But within our national interests, we also have a contribution towards the global peace cause. And that's what independent and active means. looking forward, what kind of issues should we address, and also how should we address them? And if we look at the Indonesia's regional leadership, especially ASEAN Chairmanship next year, what can we expect? Okay, first of all, let's just focus on the Joko Widodo administration, which is around 1 year left, and what kind of progress have we achieved, and what kind of targets could we contribute towards this global cause? I also agree with what Mas Satria said about resolving non-traditional security issues within the Indo-Pacific region, but this requires, again, like what Mas Satria said, a more institutionalized cooperation. And what can Indonesia contribute? Well, Indonesia used to become what we call a norm entrepreneur and also agenda setter within ASEAN. And after this successful summit in Bali last time, the G20 summit, we can bring about either in two ways, either ASEAN's agenda that we try to bring at a global level, or the global issues that we try to implement in ASEAN Southeast Asia level. So either one of them will be a big achievement for Indonesia. For example, let's look at the topics or the issues that was brought up in G20. Number one is post-pandemic recovery. And Indonesia has previously in previous G20s proposed a global health standard to be implemented. I'm not sure how it turned out in the G20 summit, but this global health standard can be started from the ASEAN region, because ASEAN has been previously successful in 3 different institutionalized cooperation, which is number one, ASEAN Political Security Cooperation, which come last actually, and we also have ASEAN Economic Community, and we also have ASEAN Social and Cultural Community. Through these 3 communities, there are still other issues which needs to be addressed, which has not been institutionalized. And we've brought the issue in G20 again. Number one is the post-pandemic recovery, talking about a global health standard to make sure there is no health issue disparity between developed and developing countries. Now, why don't we start from ASEAN first? ASEAN should have a global or a regional health standard to make sure that if in case another pandemic occurs, the ASEAN countries have already got standardization. So to make sure that no ASEAN country is left behind in terms of healthcare, because we have a standardized mechanism, and the countries in Southeast Asia with a better health system can assist those other countries also in the idea of developing their health services. When we talk about issues like health, it shouldn't be politicized, because it's not like other sensitive non-traditional security issues which actually highlights, for example, if it's refugee, then it has something to do with your national territory, but if it's global health, is everybody's need. And also the second issue is sustainable energy, and sustainable energy including trying to prevent the effects of fossil fuels towards the ecosystem. I believe as Indonesia has brought the idea of sustainable energy transition in G20, it should also become an ASEAN agenda if Indonesia's leadership can create a more institutionalized cooperation in the point that ASEAN member states should be the hub of eco-friendly technology and sustainable energy production for the region. And the third one is definitely digital economy. As always, since the pandemic and also recently as well, the growth of digital economy has been very popular. Why don't we combine this digital economy mechanism with the already running ASEAN Economic Community, so that not only physically people from different Asian countries can work overseas, but also digital marketing and startup across Southeast Asia. There has been not many collaboration between ASEAN digital economy cooperations. So this should be boosted up by the government as well, so that we have ASEAN scale businesses that could run for the whole region, not only per country. A more institutionalized cooperation, as what Mas Satria proposed previously, ASEAN should engage with SAARC between regions. I'm more interested in, let's say, among middle powers, Indonesia's leadership, besides from concern in Southeast Asia, which is, for example, through MICTA. MICTA cooperation and also BRICS cooperation. If you talk about SAARC, India is also a middle power, which is a part of BRICS. So imagine having MICTA and BRICS cooperating. So we would have middle powers from different parts of the globe trying to cooperate and bring about issues, non-traditional security issues, and also the interests of developing countries. We need a more institutionalized cooperation within the developing world and third world countries. So in MICTA, we have representatives from various regions. We have Mexico, Indonesia, South Korea, Turkey, and also Australia. We also have BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. I would love to see these two middle power associations working together, MICTA and BRICS, to form like a developing country cooperation. Those are just some of my thoughts on the kind of issues that Indonesia should bring and the kind of cooperation that Indonesia should also engage with, MICTA and also BRICS, because every time Indonesia engage with MICTA and BRICS and these middle powers, the regional interests of Southeast Asia and ASEAN can also be brought up during our leadership. We should combine both experiences, both ASEAN interests and also Indonesian leadership, connecting with middle powers, as we have already done that in G20, and bringing about solution through institutionalized cooperation.
Thank you so much, Mas. This conversation has been so fruitful.
Thank you for tuning in. Rate this conversation on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. To stay updated, visit our website ipcircle.org and follow us on Twitter @IP_circle. The opinions expressed in this podcast belong to the speakers and do not represent the organizational views held by either the Council for Strategic and Defense